Right here, not that one. Alright, well, today we are in the orchard, in my father's orchard, and we've picked a couple of dead trees. And the plan is that just at the moment, as I've got an extra pair of hands, I've been doing a bit more clinching, and we've found one or two nails that, although appeared to be okay, they hadn't fully seated, so we're just addressing that. Got the canvas here, got loads of rope, slings, carabiners, yeah, the works. We've got an airplane going above, typical, and yeah, it's looking grand. So this is about 20 minutes before we start putting the canvas on. I've just been made a coffee, so perfect time to stop. Well, we have the canoe in the canvas sleeve. Unfortunately, the first two trees were just too far apart. These are better for my rock climbing days. I've got a load of slings, which seem to be doing a job at the moment. Touch wood, don't speak too soon, Ray. I've pulled the ratchet strap up pretty much as tight as that'll go, and I've now emptied the heavy stuff out of my van, and the canoe is getting slowly nearer and nearer the ground. But the canvas is tight in this midships area, and it's dead smooth at the bottom, so clearly I haven't done this before, as I keep saying. So this is just me reading the book and trying to follow along with what they've said with, you know, improvised equipment, but so far it seems to be doing a job. So yeah, we'll see. So I'll start doing it, and then maybe we can get in a bit closer for a few of the finer details as we progress along. Right, now we are suitably refreshed. These are sheet metal mole grips, and I've glued on some of the, actually off my floor sand, I think this is 40 grit, so I'm using those and this back edge to stretch the canvas. So clamping it on like so, and then giving that a good old stretch, making sure it's nice and tight underneath. And then these are being nailed on the ribs, just below the edge where I trimmed off the shear plank. There we are. You see, that could only happen when the camera's on.
Yeah. Well,
any other time that wouldn't happen.
No.
Right, from here we've now got a crease at the bottom, so we'll work ourselves forward a bit.
Oh right.
Just go forward a sniff. One rib, two ribs. Right, let me just grip it. That's it. And then we'll give this a pull, because I think this one is nice and tight. Yes, it is. So pull that down. That's the rib. That's the top there. That is a spit around, you're right. So at the moment I'm just doing every other rib, just with one nail, just so we can see what's happening here. So what we've got to try and do now is there is quite so I'll make sure that is well stretched. I don't know how much is well stretched enough, but at the moment I'm just using my judgment, so I'm going to go around the other side, but it's not dropping down much between the nails, so I think that's a good sign. Yeah, that's got to come up a lot here actually. Now, if I take a bit more canvas off, we think that's going to help the situation. Right, what's that done? Still got quite a big crease in the bottom for some reason. Right, we do. Seems to be going okay at the moment. I've nailed this side up to pretty much where I want to go before we turn it over to do the rest. And these, I tell you what, these are working marvellously because they are gripping this canvas really tightly. And when I've seen the ones that some people use with various spikes in, I think there's a danger that they can tear the canvas. Well, these are gripping it, pulling it plenty tight enough, and I don't think there's any risk of tearing the canvas with these. So they seem to be working like a charm. So if you're planning on doing this, that could be a decent tip. I was a bit concerned about the creases at the bottom at these ends, but so far it has been pulling out remarkably well. So I'm only doing a couple one side and then I'm having to alternate, as you might expect. So yeah, I can have a good look underneath, make sure the crease is gone, and then tack it in. I can't tell you how much better this is than bloody sanding. Bloody hell. Outside in an orchard, nice and cool, and I'm not sanding. Sometimes, and I've got a canoe. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, can life ever get any better than this? Bloody great. Right, another couple in each end I think, and then we're going to take it off to release the tension. As the canoe is now almost touching the bloody ground. I don't know what's giving up here. Something's stretching. I have a feeling that tree might be starting to let go. So it better not be too much longer. Right, there's a big crease there, but I think that's going to stretch out here. Time I get round the other side, hopefully that'll go on. So you've got to try and find the end of the rib, which is not easy sometimes. And then I'm just below that, just below the line that I cut the shear plank at. Right, we'll just go and double check the other side, and then I think what I might do then is I might just go along and just completely, I'm going to put 2 nails on every rib, complete that. Then we'll get it out of the slings, spin it over, and then we're down to trying to cut and stitch the ends up, so that'll be another thing. But so far, yeah, it's like anything, a bit sort of feely, a bit touchy-feely to start with, but once you got going, it's actually pretty good. So yeah, right, I'm now just going along and filling in between now. So just giving it don't need to go mad with the tension now because it's already fixed either side. Just bringing it nicely taut. Now, we haven't relieved any tension, so you can see my canoe has turned into a lowrider. So I'm nailed up to the back end of the decks on both sides. The ends I double nailed as I was there because I was happy enough that the canvas was nice and tight and there wasn't any creases in it. My assistant over there is getting prepared, and we're going to be turning this upside down on the trestles very shortly. We'll then be able to see about what's going to happen with the ends. This will be another step along the learning curve, I suspect. Doing some stuff on the motorhome. The good news is it passed its MOT this morning with flying colours, so that's good. Oh, you didn't know that, did you? Yes, I've been up early. I've already MOT'd my camper van this morning before I loaded the van up to come over here. Don't know why I'm worried about the quality of build. It doesn't need to last another 20 years, does it? Not for me. I won't be paddling it in 20 years' time, that's for sure. Well, no, hopefully I will be, but maybe just a little tiny jaunt around the edge of the Broads, perhaps.
You wouldn't be going through the Salem stretch?
No, I think we'll be giving Salem a miss. Yeah. I think Salem in the mid-80s is probably not the best plan. Mind you, by then you probably have to have a man with you with a first aid kit to follow you around, just to make sure you don't have a nasty accident. Well, yeah. Probably be a bloody robot. A drone following you.
Certainly won't be any Fred Dibnah.
No, they bloody won't. No, Fred Dibnah.
There's a one-off.
It's a one-off, yeah. Yeah, right, this is the last tack. How about that? So, are the trestles prepared? Good morning, Sunday morning, and I've just done a hyperlapse of me stitching over this half of the canvas. Yeah, it's gone quite well. you may have seen, I had to just, which I think is fairly typical from what I've read, I had to just take these nails out and just reposition the canvas slightly and then re-tack it. I had to do slightly more this end than I did the other end, but you just have to play it by ear really. The important thing is it's stretched quite tight, and obviously it's touching the, here where the canoe dips in, and it does need quite a stretch to get it tight to the timber. But yeah, so far that's gone quite well. So I'll just tack that on the end of the inner stem there. And once the Zinsser watertite is on, then this will be trimmed off anyway, and those nails can be taken out. Is my plan. So I'm now going to trim this off neat, and I've got some Sikaflex 552, and I'm going to put a bead of that. After I've trimmed this, I'm going to put a bead just to hold that edge down. The thing I struggled with at the other end is once I'd cut this off, that edge, when I pulled the other canvas over the top, I just wanted to keep turning that edge over, which was a bloody nuisance, to be honest. And it was very difficult to stop that from happening. So I'm going to put some Sikaflex on, and hopefully that'll just keep that edge a bit flatter. So I might just have to pop that on and leave it for a little while before I fold the other side over. So that's my plan, and this should help to seal this stem area. I mean, I'm hoping that the watertight stuff is actually going to fit all this and seal it anyway. I mean, that's supposed to be waterproof, so you'd hope so. But I guess a little bit of this in won't go amiss. And I shall probably use this as well when I put the outer gunnels on, because there will be a, you know, at the top they're going to be touching the ribs, but that will be sandwiching the paint on the cedar there. So clearly that needs something on it, because if it's upside down, the water runs down. If that isn't sealed, the water's just going to get straight in there, and that's where, you know, the rot is going to set in, isn't it? Which, when I said about the guys in America who are repairing them, I mean, virtually every one of them is because of rot. So either at the end of the stems are rotted, the top shear plank is rotted, and, you know, often the outer gunnels as well. But obviously the water does tend to get in and lie in that area, and because there's less airflow here, I suppose, and the wave at the end's tipped down. So I'm going to make sure that I leave, whatever I do here, I'm going to make sure the ends of this has got some gaps in when the outer gunnel goes on, so any moisture in there has got an escape route, is what I'm hoping to do. Don't quite know how I'm going to achieve it yet, but I will come up with some grand plan, I'm sure. So there we are. That's the last little update. So I'm now going to progress with that, and I'll see you guys a bit later. Hello again. Another quick coffee break. I've successfully fixed 3 ends of the canoe now, so when you cut it down you end up with 4 flaps. So 3 flaps are done and sealed. I'm now on the last flap, as it were, and I thought it might be rather nice for some of you to see the technique that I've now perfected, because now I'm an expert, obviously. Yeah, so no, I can't remember. I think I have seen some videos where they've shown, I think often they show you them trimming it and then they show you it finished, but I can't remember seeing many of the actual process. But you know, there's hundreds of videos, so I'm not saying there isn't any, but I thought I'd just try and do that and just share a few of the things that I've found out, because it is, you know, it's a bit of a leap into the unknown when you're doing this kind of thing. You know, it's all very well watching videos, reading books, reading people's accounts and pictures and things, but it isn't until you actually do it for the first time that you really, all that stuff makes sense and you learn. So what I'm trying to achieve with some of these videos is putting myself in your position, you know. So if you're going to embark on building one of these, you know, what would you want to know, which is what I've had to find out often, you know, with a lot of research or even trial and error. And this is how I'm going to continue the videos, as I've already said. But anyway, so this is what I'm now going to do. So I'm going to film this whole process and we'll see how it goes. So the fact that I've done 3 successfully doesn't mean that this one is going to be the same, but hopefully that will. Because sod's law, the very one I try and show is the one where it'll all go tits up. But there we are. But anyway, today I am sporting my washing mistake. So, you know, nice colour coordinated. I've already had a compliment this morning. I don't think they realised it was a mistake, but there we are. But no, so I'm going to set the camera up and we'll see how this goes. Right, here we go. So, I'm going to check this in a minute, make sure you can see everything. But it's difficult to appreciate when this canvas was in, you know, when I was stretching this yesterday, just how much tension there was on this canvas. Because as soon as we released it, where I put the last nails in, you can see that's pulled back quite significantly. Now I think with hindsight, I nailed too near this end, or either end. I think I probably should have stopped about here. But I can't go back and test that theory, but that's just what I thought, because on every other end I've had to release these nails and sometimes these ones and re-stretch it, which isn't an issue because they, you know, you can, providing you're careful with the right tool, you can pull those out quite easily. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this up a bit until most of the creases go, and then I'm going to try and stretch this as tight as I can at the bottom and just wrap it around, and then I'm going to clamp it with one of my spring clamps. Now these come in various guises. These are some that I bought when I built my cedar strip canoe, so these were, you know, over 11 years old, and they are, I don't know what the pressure is, but they are really, really strong. So I'm just going to put those on the end and nip that, just to hold that tension on while I deal with this. I bought these recently to do, you know, more with this, and they're, you know, they're nowhere near the strength that these have got, and these wouldn't hold this as tight. So, you know, if you're doing this, you want to try and make sure you've got some quite strong spring clamps, and then that holds it quite nicely. So I can now come up here, and as you can see, as I pull this up, you can see those folds what are there are now disappearing. The one area where you end up with a bit of bother is where you finally, because, you know, where do you stop cutting the canvas? If you go too far, then you haven't got anything to lap. So what happens is, as you lie it over, you get a little pucker here. So, but when I re-tension this on the other end, that did disappear, so that wasn't the end of the world. And on this canoe, I am certainly going to be having stem bands, front and rear, and I'm going to make sure they extend well back, probably where my stems finish. So they're going to run back a long way, is what I'm planning, and they're going to be wide enough to fill this whole end. I have seen some online, brass stem bands. They're not the cheapest thing I've ever seen. So, and because I want quite long ones, I suspect we may have a bit of an issue with carriage, because I don't think, well, unless they can roll them up, but I saw some at 3 metres long, which would appear to be perfect, because I could half that and have 1.5 metres at each end. But like I said, I haven't delved into the carriage charges yet, but no doubt I could go and pick some up, because there is somewhere reasonably local to me where I might be able to get them from. So I'm going to pick this up. So what I'm using on these ends is I've got some 6mm tacks. Depending on whose account you read, this varies. Now the Rollins book, which one of the main books I've been following, which I am going to get that book out and show you in a bit, it is called the Wood Canvas Canoe, I believe, and it's by Jerry Stelmock and somebody Rollins. Anyway, they're like the godfather of this canvas lark, from what I can make out. they seem to be what Ted uses to see the strips. They seem to be the guys for canvas. But anyway, he does actually recommend using 1/4 inch nails, which is what I have here. Other books I've read, people are talking about 1/2 inch to 5/16. Well, I have been using these to hold the planks on, but I feel they're a bit mighty because you're putting them in at every inch or so. In fact, some people say every 1/2 inch, every 10 mil. It's a lot of nails, and if they're quite long, I would be a bit concerned about how well this ash stem is going to take it, because you could introduce a split. So I'm using the short ones, and then every now and again I will put in a bigger one just to lock it, but the short ones do seem to be doing a good job. So that's what I'm now going to put in here. Now, I haven't had my copper vitamins today, but if you've got these in your mouth, you have to be careful because they're bloody small. It'll be very easy to swallow one. Right, that's the first tack. So I'm keeping these in the middle of the stem, obviously, where the ash is, as opposed to a little bit each side where the cedar is. Right, now that one, when I nailed it in, that immediately folded flat. So whether that's gone on another nail or something harder, you probably won't be able to see that, but that's bent right over, nearly flat, so that's no good. So if you notice that happening, you need to pull it out, because otherwise sure as hell it will fall out at some stage. Put another one in, there we are. Right, now actually putting this, I mean, in that book clearly he's not using this. They've made up some concoction of sealer with all kinds of products, or you just buy it from one of the shops over there. Like I've said previously, that ain't coming into the UK, so I did read somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but somebody else had used Sikaflex, and they didn't say it was a disaster. But so we'll see. Sorry, I'm not talking at the moment. I was taught it was rude to speak with your mouth full. So I don't think copper nails is what they had in mind with that saying, but I'm not talking with a mouth full of copper nails. To some people, that'll probably be quite a relief. Thank God he shut up for a minute. So now I'll pull it down there, I'm reasonably confident now to tack this end, because when I tension here, that'll pull that taut. What I'm aiming for here is just to make a nice neat fold and wrap over. Now I don't mind using several of these because they are nice and short. This one went in really easy. Again, that one, see, that one went really flat. Look at that, it's flattened right off. So you can never really take your eye off the ball. And you can tell when they've gone in correctly if you're paying attention. Right, I'm just going to come down a little bit further. This will probably be about the end of it, I think, here, because I've run out of Sikaflex. Right, I'm now going to pop in a bigger one and making sure that is right in the middle of that stem, and make sure I've driven it in perpendicular to the stem as well. So now I can just continue with a roll of these. That one's folded, saw that straight away. You know, they're only copper, so you have to be careful with that first strike, because if you catch it on its side, that immediately falls over. Because these are very small, you can't hold it and nail it, so you just have to try and press it in as hard as you can. And usually they stay there because these have got a pretty sharp point, although you do get some which are a bit dull. That one I've actually bent that putting it in. I think I am on an existing nail under there, so I'm just going to move the position slightly. There we are. Right, this one didn't go in correctly, so I'll pop him out and redo that down here. God, dear oh dear. If you pick something up and it falls down, you can guarantee it lands in the box with your bleeding nails in. Obviously I could edit my clumsiness out, but I think sometimes it's rather fun to leave it in, because, you know, no matter who you are, everything doesn't always go right. So now I'm going to put a bit more, I'm going to come down to about here, and then I'm going to turn my attention to that. So I'm just going to put some more of this in. Now this, I didn't put this underneath on the other one, I put it in afterwards because I didn't fancy it all becoming a real mess, but actually this, I think, is actually really helping. So you can see we've got a bit of a crease there, so we need to make sure that this is pulled down here like so. Now that's gone. So I'm just gripping this in my hands, but I can feel there that it's rucked up the bloody edge of the layer underneath. Now this is the problem I had at the other end. That was very annoying. At this end, say, it's faring a bit better. So yes, I've got a real hard grasp on that. But as I am a manual worker, I do have a reasonably strong grip. So not everybody will be able to possibly get enough tension on that. If you can't, then obviously you can always use the stretching tool that you have, or you may copy the one I've made, which is working like an absolute charm, I have to say. didn't know quite what to expect, but that's worked a lot better than I dared to hope. And I think, as I said yesterday, I can't believe any tool is going to be any better than that. But there we are. I'm sure someone will think, you know, you're wrong, mate. But there we are. Alright, I'm going to put another big one in here to finish off with. I am showing everything, so, you know, I'm putting myself on the line a bit. But, you know, sometimes you have to stand by what you're doing and not be afraid of showing people. And if it's wrong, then they'll obviously be man enough to stand up and say it's wrong. But so far, I think it's working out okay. So I'm now going to try and angle the canoe over a bit more so that I can get a bit better angle to stretch this down, which will then pull out those last remaining little bits there and make it nice and tight. And I'll undo these and do that as well. I'm sure with the amount of coffee I drink that I ought to be able to get some sort of deal in the future with a coffee supply. If my videos garnish enough attention and enough followers one day, long in the future, and I'm not dead already, hopefully, we'll have a deal. Right, I need to move this back a bit. So I'm going to secure this here. Trying to get the camera in the right place so that you can see and I can work and we're not getting in each other's way isn't the easiest. You have to bear in mind this wide angle camera, as most of these cameras are, they do tend to distort things a bit. So though I may look short and fat, I'm not. Yes. No, I'm definitely not short. I'm not tall either. But I don't think I fall into the short category. I am 5'9", so you know. It doesn't look like it, but right, I think that will do. So I just marked where the sides of the rib are. A lot of this is very obvious. You know, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I just feel these things are sometimes just worth mentioning. I'm sure somebody will say, why did you put those marks on there? And, you know, this is the whole point of demonstrating what you're doing, isn't it? It's to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. You see, as soon as I mean, the amount of pressure I've got just on these is incredible. And when when it comes right, you can actually then see the edges of the rib. But in some places I've been, that's not been easy to see that. So clearly you don't want to. It would be probably quite easy to overstretch it if you were, especially if you're a quite strong person. Because you have got a huge amount of leverage. I've never done much with canvas before, and I am surprised at just how stretchy that is. And I suppose I have got some I have got some stretchy jeans indoors, so obviously that's because everything, that's how it is. But yeah, it's quite incredible actually. So even when you think there's something there, but you know, well, I'm never going to get that crease out, but actually you'd be surprised. As soon as you apply a bit of tension, that all miraculously disappears. But also, you know, if you stretch it too much here, you'll end up with a crease here. So you know, you've got to be sensible, should we say. And with nearly anything like this, constant observation is the key. Now that nail just folded over, so get rid of him. Now, I am nailing this on the ends of the, or on the edges of the inner gunnel. So when this is finished, obviously this is where my outer gunnel is going to be, so this canvas will be cut off. But I'm hoping that once this filler coat is on, but everything will just end up stiff, and you can just cut this where you want it without any shrink back. That's my gamble. I've not read anything any different, but you know, I'm sure we will find out in due course. So what I'm going to do now is just adjust these ones here, because I want to just try and remove some of that little fold there where I finished nailing. Everywhere else it is quite tight, but we have got this stretching thing going on here. Now, I shouldn't have to say, but this is a bit tricky. So I'm using, these are Bahoo wrecking knives, which is one of my favourite tools. But any knife, or you know, anything with a sort of relatively sharp edge will work. But similarly, anything with a sharp edge will also rip the canvas, so you have to be bloody careful. So I'm just pushing the corner and easing it underneath that tack, and then that's just literally just lifting out. But because now the end is gone, I won't reuse them. I should put some new ones in, because once that sharp point is gone, I don't always go in the best. So those two have now come out. So what I'm going to do now is just let this canvas just come back a bit. I should probably do those two as well. But I'm now just stretching that again there. I mean, that little bit of puckering up at the end there is, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that. So I should just fold that up, and I'll show you in a minute, and I'll tack it down underneath where the stem band is going to be. I haven't seen anything else that anyone else has done which says anything much about that at the end there. But both of those went in rather easy, so I'm going to put another one in the middle, because I don't quite know what's going on there. Probably by some miracle I found exactly the same holes that I was in before, but I don't like taking chances too much, so yeah, I'm just going to do exactly the same with these two here. Hopefully you can just about see that, but yeah, really got to be, you know, can't emphasise how careful you've got to be doing this. You could very quickly, if that slips, you could end up with a whole gouge across there, because you know, I'm having to put a fair bit of tension on this. And if you gouge it across there, apart from coming out with a massive string of 4-letter words, I think you would end up having to take all the canvas off, buy some more and redo it. And that would be what I call a bad day. Just going to mark where that rib is again. Right, and I think this one will be, the one. Because that is looking quite fine now. Yeah. If you didn't see my previous video, these are just sheet metal mold grips, and I've glued on some 40 grit sandpaper, which is out of my floor sander, which is incredibly abrasive, and they have been fantastic. I have no hesitation in recommending anyone do the same, because that is a relatively cheap tool. I can't remember what the mould grips cost me, but they weren't a lot. I think they're about £14, possibly less than that, but there was some postage involved. And I already had that because I was using it to sand the hull down, and so all I did was just trim the bits off the end, which were the bits that were actually folded over my sanding block, so they hadn't had any use at all. Right, so anyway, now that's successfully done. All we've got to do now is just trim off this end. So I'll just move you just to there, which hopefully will mean that you'll get a relatively good view. Right, so I'm just going to fold that back so you can see where the other sides come over. I mean, I've not gone mad with nails. I mean, they're not, what are they? They're between, these ones are about 1 inch apart. I guess these are about 1.5 inches, but I know I'm going to have another row, you know, on this one. So I think as long as you've got enough just to hold things in place until the filler coat is done, should be okay. So I'll just run a small bead of Sikaflex. Now, I have used Sikaflex a few times in the past. I used quite a few tubes of that when I was constructing my camper van, because that is what we use to, you know, go around all the skylights, windows, you know, the works. So yeah, so I have used that a lot. And the one thing that I remember from before is that once you've cut it and started using it, it lasts no time at all. So it would be nice if I could keep that tube alive until I've got the outer gunnels done, but I think because the Sweden trip is looming, I can't see me getting them done before I go. There's a chance, but we'll see. And that ain't gonna be, by the time I get back, that will be gone hard. So, but that's alright. I managed to find that. I think that one came on eBay, and because it's past its best before date, it was relatively cheap. Now, you'd probably be surprised to hear this, but I aren't the world's biggest proponent of best before dates. I think that's all a bit of a racket to sell more product to people, or more groceries, or more food, or more whatever, because some things just don't seem to go off that quick to me. But there we are. I may be wrong, often the case, but that's my belief. So if I open it, that looks off, then obviously it's off, but if it isn't, then it's not. Right, so that one just bent over, so I'm going to stick that in there. Well, we have nearly done this, haven't we? So just a few more tacks here. And then we've got the tricky job, that one again, that one folded over when they go in, you can, it's, yeah, you might think, be watching this thinking, how on earth does he know that? But trust me, when you're doing it, you will obviously spot it and feel it. So there's something there. I must be on another nail underneath. That one's gone, that's alright. Yeah, so now it's just this last little stretch here now. So because we're on the outer skin, I'm putting a few more nails in now, a bit closer together, because that's going to anchor this one and the layer underneath, really. And these little tiny 1/4 inch or 6mm tacks aren't going to do any harm. They're long enough just to get into the ash without doing any damage, in my view anyway. And I certainly will not be driving a long one in anywhere near the end, because if wood is going to split anywhere, it's always at the end. Yeah, that one didn't go. So that bulbous bit there is the end of the stem. I am just going to stick one in there. Knowing full well that will have to come out in the future, but that's fine. I can pick these out quite easily, as you've already seen. Right, there we are. We are secured. If I had a drum, I'd do a drum roll, but I haven't. But that looks pretty decent to me. So the last thing to do is the delicate operation of cutting the canvas. So the other thing is, with this canoe so far, I haven't given it a name. I've got one or two ideas, but if anyone's got any ideas for a suitable name for my latest idea, yeah, write a comment. It would be lovely to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to try and show this. This is almost impossible to get a camera angle on, but right, so what I did at the other end is I pulled the canvas tight and I just slipped the blade through the canvas like that, and then using a little sawing motion, and I'm using this part of the Stanley knife as a fulcrum, as it were, and I'm cutting that incredibly close. Better if you can try and make a clean cut without leaving any stray threads behind, but that does seem to be quite difficult. I struggled on the other end anyway. I had to go along with some scissors and just trim those off at the end. So and as you get to the thin bit, it tears off anyway, so that's not too bad. So now I'm just going to see where the stem is, and I'm now just going to gently just trim that down there. And once I've cleared the stem, we can give it one of them. This is what we've just achieved. So you can now see, yeah, right from the bottom, obviously these are the two flaps which will be cut off, but that's pulled down, and as I pull this up, you can see the whole stem now. This is a little bit, that's a little bit of puckering, so I'm going to pull this across and just put a couple of more tacks in there until that's gone, and then that will be covered under the stem band. So, but other than that, when you look down here now, it all looks pretty tight. So my next thing, apart from now, I'm going to go indoors and sort myself out some dinner, give this Sikaflex a chance to dry. Right, well, I think we're now ready for the waterproofing phase. Now this is the Zinsser watertite, guaranteed to stop water, waterproofing paint. So I've just read all the blurb on the back. It does sound like it's really wonderful stuff, particularly for stopping water going through walls, which is quite useful when you're building, particularly in a cellar kind of scenario. It doesn't mention anything on there about canoe building, surprisingly enough. And I have found one account online where somebody used this, and it seems to have worked, and several other people have used it, although I haven't been able to find out who they are. But the account I read, apart from saying they put on one really thick coat and followed by a further 2 coats, it didn't actually say how much he used. Now this is a 5 litre tin, and you know, I have enough feeling to work out, but that's bloody heavy. So I just chucked it on the scales, and this tin is about 7 3/4 kilos. I'm sure that didn't make much sense, did I? 7.75 kilos. So if I put all of that on this canoe, you ain't got to be a rocket scientist to work out it's going to immediately put it up to 28 kilos without anything else. So I do not want to be using all of this tin, far from it. It is quite thick and gloopy, so I don't quite know how that's going to go on. I have shortened the hairs on this brush, and I have made a fair hash of it, because it's cutting hairs off is quite difficult, it would seem. But anyway, I'm going to give this a good brush on and we'll see what happens. I think the first coat particularly is going to soak in, and so I don't quite know how far that's going to soak in. This is all part of the learning phase, I guess. I have chosen a 12-ounce canvas. They class it as 12-ounce heavy duty, and again I will put all the details in the links. So I'm hoping this isn't going to soak up too much, because they also do a 15-ounce canvas as well, which clearly the thicker the canvas, the more it's going to soak in. So I'm going to start applying it near the end, and yeah, we'll just see what happens. So you can now join me into an unknown voyage where we will both possibly learn something. Yes, right. Let us proceed. I can stand that there. Now I'm going to just... I think this is thick enough that that's going to hold the seams down quite nicely, so let's just start by brushing a bit in the middle here. Yeah, that is pretty thick stuff actually. Yeah, that's quite thick and it is quite sticky, so it does say not to thin it, and it also says touch dry in an hour, and recoat time is 4 hours. So I can only do this one today, and then I will then do another coat tomorrow night. Now I think in between coats I will end up giving this a little tiny sand, just very lightly, because it is, I can see already that it's going to be quite a coarse, grainy texture. It seems the way of the world at the moment that everything is just made to a cost to maximise profit, with no regard for the end user using it. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who seems to be constantly disappointed with the quality of products that I buy. There's a lot to be said for actually buying something. Sorry, I'm going to go off onto a bit of a whinge here. But there's something to be said for actually buying something that actually bloody well works properly how you want it to. You know, and to get quality items. It seems like buying quality items nowadays is very difficult. And paying lots of money for it isn't always a guarantee either. So I guess it's all a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? There's no point having the lightest canoe lying on the bottom of the lake. It's got to float, and it's got to be waterproof. So when I've done this, I will be able to weigh the can again, and I'll then know how much I've increased the weight of the canoe by, clearly. So anyway, what I was saying earlier, obviously there is some paint to go over this, so there'll be at least one coat of primer. And from what I've read from other people, we can expect anywhere between about 3 and 5 coats of paint, which is a lot. And paint usually is quite waterproof as well, so when you're putting it on top of this, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't hold the water out. Right, I know I said earlier that I might appreciate a bit of feedback on some suitable names for this canoe before anybody is tempted. It's not going to be called bloody Bertie McBoatface or whatever the other rubbish was, and no similar string of C-lettered words either. So, because I'm pretty sure some wag would come up with that. Was it Bertie McFay, whatever it was some ridiculous online poll. Very funny, but no. I want just a nice, simple name. We do want to. It says about applying a liberal coat. I think we have to be sensible, because otherwise we're going to end up with a canoe that weighs an absolute ton. But obviously, if I was selling any product, I would be encouraging people to use as much of it as possible as well, because it's good for business, isn't it? Yeah, spread on a ton of it, because we are actually getting nearer the end of this canoe building process, aren't we? You know, the canoe is getting somewhere near it. So aside from just finishing this, and then obviously the outside's got to be painted, and I've then got to just do a little bit more work on the outer gunnels. So I've already got the stock ready, but I've just got to get it exactly the right shape, or sort of size I should say, not shape, get it to its right size, and then get the rebate in, and then that can all be fitted then. So the inner gunnels need a bit of shaping. I'm probably going to have to run around them a bit on the edges just to curve them off. Decks need to be finally fitted, and sanded. Sand the inner gunnels, fit the outer gunnels. I know I've already mentioned quite a few things there, but none of those should take an age. Decide on what I'm going to do on the inside in regards to varnish, Osmo, something else. Then I'm going to fit the seat. I probably won't fit the seat straight away. What I think I might do is take it out on the water without the seat, just kneeling in the middle, and then I'm going to take something along with me, or a few things at different heights, and I just want to do a few experiments as to what I think the right seat height will be. I'll probably do the first trip will be, I think I'll make the first trip on the local bit of river that I first took my cedar strip canoe on all those years ago. That's a nice little place to get in and out of, and a nice gentle paddle, no obstacles, usually no people, so that'll be quite a nice first test. Now I did have quite a few trips on the boards last winter, as well as a lot of other things I did last winter, but of course that was before I started my YouTube channel. so all the stuff I've done before nobody knows anything about, but I did have quite a few trips on the boards, and they were rather nice. It's a lovely place winter time. Still quite a lot of bird life there. You've got the lovely misty mornings, often some decent sunsets as well, and like I say, the boat traffic is vastly reduced. Now, I'm sure this is probably not the most interesting video you've ever seen, watching a man paint a canoe, so I will cut a lot of this out and just leave in some of the highlights. One of the things I have read about canvas canoes is that obviously when you're using them, if they get wet inside, or if it's raining for instance, or you tip it over, or you go through some rough water and you get water sloshed inside, that has a tendency to soak into the planks, and it can soak into the canvas from the inside. So naturally that will increase the weight of the canoe quite a bit when you're on your trip. But then when you finish your trip, obviously it's crucially important that the canoe is positioned in such a way that it can dry out. And I don't think that's necessarily a good idea to like tuck it inside a garage or something where there's no airflow. I guess ideally you're going to be outside somewhere. I will now, I'm going to have to go to the back side. Now the areas where I want to be really particular is around these stems, for obvious reasons, and particularly obviously where the canvas is folded over, because we really need that to be ultra waterproof, because that seems to be the weakest area, doesn't it, where we've actually sliced the canvas and then lapped it and nailed it. Ta-da! What I might do now, I might go and have a look at the camper van, because that needs a wash desperately, so that's I think that was where I might be now. So